is Andy Rawll from MetalTalk, and today we're at the Gibson Brands London Showroom to talk about your new album. I think it's out in a couple of days, Night Siren, and also the impending, fairly impressive and expansive tour that you've got coming up in Europe.
Yeah, all of those things are happening this week. We've been on tour in the States and the Caribbean. The album comes out in 2 days' time, so and then we're off to Europe, and we'll be in the UK about a month after that. Then we end up doing Australia and Far East and New Zealand, Jakarta, Hong Kong, Singapore, places I haven't been before, some of those, so looking forward to it.
Yeah, that's great. So how much is the Night Siren a progression from the previous album, Wolflight? Because I seem to remember the theme of that album was about universal struggle for freedom.
Yeah, well, in a way it continues that. There's a couple of tracks on the Night Siren. There's Behind the Smoke, which is about refugees, and we've got a video that accompanies that. It was shot in Serbia, which I'm particularly proud of. Then we've got West to East, that's got Israeli and Palestinian singing on it. So there's a peace theme that runs throughout that. Other than that, the rest of the album is pure entertainment, but it's got 20 people from all around the world, from different places, from Iceland to Hungary to Azerbaijan, Sweden, the UK, United States, some of it recorded in Sardinia. So it's a bit of a kind of, it's a migrating thing really. There aren't many borders for musicians and albums like this.
So I noticed there wasn't a title track. What inspired the album name?
Well, originally we were thinking about something that might accompany the track called The Skeleton Gallery. We were thinking in terms of nightmares and childhood fears, but then we started to think that in a way, the Night Siren, and I was talking to my wife about when we used to live as kids at Victoria. There used to be this siren that used to go off in the night with the trains, and it made me think of that. But then we were thinking of in a way, that as symbolic of a wake-up call in terms of a world in divided times where there are so many refugees. It seems as if there's compassion fatigue and quite a lot of fascist thinking in terms of the popular view is just send them back home. That isn't going to work. It smacks of final solution, and I'm horrified what's going on in the world at the moment. So there are things on the album that address that. So in a way, you could say, yes, I'm worried about how my album performs in the marketplace, but I'm actually more worried about, because I've got enough food on the table to eat, but I'm worried about people who don't have a pot to piss in. Never mind to be able to feed themselves. So, we need to be able to address that.
So, just hearing the album, the lyrics seem to be a lot more driven by, I guess, a lot more personal, and with social commentary. Yeah. How much of it is from, let's say, personal or family experience?
Well, I think probably all of it's personal. There might be one escapist track, which would be The Other Side of the Wall, which is rather more sort of romantic. Ballad, but apart from that, I think it's probably, I don't know whether you could say autobiographical. I mean, for instance, the opening track, Behind the Smoke, as I said, is about refugees, and you might think, well, that's a very current problem, if we talk about it as a problem. But actually the reality is that 100 years ago, my family were refugees escaping from Poland from religious persecution, who made it to the UK and they were allowed in. And it's the same with my wife's family, one half of the family, of course. Luckily, both those families orientated towards London's East End and, worked very hard to support themselves and their families. And I think, we're so much richer for it, and indeed, neither of us would be here today if it hadn't been for that. So, you might think of, of the Victorian era sending kids down the mines and up chimneys, but they were letting people in at least, so it wasn't as if the world was adopting, or at least England wasn't adopting a fortress mentality. Sorry to bring it back to that issue, but I just think it's so, in the face of it. And I think music is a kind of in the wider sense of the word, it's about harmony and about harmony between people. So the album is really about unity between people. So we've got tons of people from everywhere and instruments from everywhere, and so its central theme is unity.
Let me ask you a little bit more about the eclectic band of musicians.
Yeah.
How did the whole piece come together in terms of not just the core band with your normal recording band? Was that an organic process?
Well, what we found was, we were travelling a lot. Musicians do, and I'm doing a lot of touring these days as a byproduct of releasing albums. But in addition to that, my wife loves to travel. She wants to visit everywhere on the map. So quite apart from what we do musically, in recent times we got to visit China, Cambodia, Thailand, some places that I've never heard of Elvis Presley, never mind, Phil Collins. And, this was extraordinary. So it gets to inform the music. We've made friends everywhere, and just inviting people in from places as diverse as Azerbaijan and Hungary, and working with Icelandic musicians, as I've been doing partly recently as well. It means that, a lot of them, I said, would you like to be part of the album? And then, 20 people all called me back and said yes. And Joe said, you better stop promising people things at the moment, you can't deliver. I said, well, I think we can fit all of these people in. And so it's made for a very eclectic mix of styles and instruments. And as you say, the core band is there, so the familiar faces are there, but it's expanded, it's extended family, all of it.
And I guess that helped deliver a lot of really cinematic feel to a lot of the pieces. I mean, the ones I particularly liked from the album is the 50 Miles from the North Pole and also El Nino. They've got that sort of fantastic landscape of sound.
I think landscaping is important. Maybe it's because I'm a Londoner, sorry. Maybe it's because my dad was an artist. He painted pictures of places all over the world, and I think my version of that is to try and do it musically. So anyone who gets to visit somewhere like Iceland, you have to be impressed with the extremes, because you've got volcanoes and you've got snow, you've got everything there. You've got the mountains, you've got the sea, you've got birds being blown backwards, you've got waterfalls frozen or flying upwards. It's so turbulent, it's extraordinary, and it changes every 15 or 20 minutes. It's worse than the UK in that way. So that informs it. Sometimes, and of course we went to Peru, the Andean music, and again, you've got cities built into the clouds with Machu Picchu and all of that. So all I've got to do is keep my ears and eyes open, and sounds start to form, and so we come up with tracks like Inca Terra, which means Inca Earth, really.
Yeah.
And so it's got that influence. It starts small with a little charango, a little string instrument, and then it ends up with full orchestra and rock bands coming out of it, and tribes and all sorts of stuff. Yeah,
for me it's a great track. It's kind of a mixture of incantation, the panpipes guys,
yeah.
Crosby, Stills and Nash with the fantastic harmonies. It's a great amalgam.
It's all of that, and I know you mentioned El Nino, and I thought with El Nino it was again this idea of weather patterns and different temperatures and pressures and wind and wave and all that sort of stuff. So we had an orchestra, we had a tribe's worth of drums and a rock band. And then they all kind of fight for supremacy, and particularly with the surround sound mix, it's a bit like being in the eye of the storm. It's all going on around you. So it's not really a simple picture, but it is very filmic. It's very much a film for the lugholes rather than the eyes.
So one thing that we come to expect from Steve Hackett albums is lush orchestrated vocals, the wonderful soundscape. What I also noticed on the other side of the wall, which is more of a kind of a solo vocal, your voice sounds really strong and confident. Have you sort of grown into that singing style?
I think that people have started to accept me as a singer now. Why do people buy guitarists' albums? Obviously, it's not usually for the singing, but sometimes you can be pleasantly surprised and go, I didn't realise that was possible. So I think the more you sing, the more you start to work with it, like these fabulous instruments around us here, and you think, well, so many people say, oh, I can't sing, I am a slug, I want to be a god, I'm a mere slug. And you just have to say, well, you've got to have confidence, first of all, because anyone can speak in a whisper or scream their head off. So already you've got that dynamic range. Whether you can sing in tune or not is another matter. I mean, I met Bruce Willis in New York, who came to a couple of shows of ours, and he said, I scream in tune, very, very modestly, and plays harmonica, like me, as it happens. But and you just think, well, it's all about acting, I think. People talk about that. If you can live the song, if you can believe the words that you're singing, that helps, I think. And you need to realise you can. Vocal dynamics. I shouldn't go into vocal coaching stuff. I had 1 or 2 singing lessons way back in the 70s from my brother's girlfriend, who became an opera singer, and she said to me, and it was very good, she said, we do these vocal exercises and we'll see how high you can go. And she said, you can sing really high. And in those days, I could sing higher than I can now. She said, you've got a really good range. And I thought, oh really? Because I don't think I can sing, And then that's another matter, isn't it? Someone giving you the permission. But first of all, with all endeavour, be it musical or whatever, don't fail yourself. The internal invalidator is always there saying, yeah, you can't do that, you can't act, you can't sing, you can't dance, you can't play, give up. But until we put that to one side and say, well, it's never too late, I might just try this singing lark, and it might well be that you can just about get away with it. I know Pete Gabriel said, if I can sing, anyone can. He's referring to himself. So he thinks that singing is a learned, I'm going to say art. You just have to keep coming back to the tables until something started. A lot of it's psychological. The penny starts to drop, and you think, yeah, I can do that. And I like vibrato too. It took me decades to get finger vibrato together. With playing, it's not an easy thing. And singing, God, I'll use every trick in the book to get vibrato with my voice. Whether it means waggling the head or jumping up and down or whatever it is. But you figure if you're not born with natural vibrato and you've got to work for it, then you just keep trying it all the time. You surprise yourself.
So there's a track in Anything But Love, which is another one that really sticks in my mind. It's really catchy, and it starts with some nice flamenco guitar. Then it gets into, I characterise it, it's kind of a mixture of REM playing Don't Fear the Reaper, and then it goes in a fantastic harmonica solo. So tell me about your harmonica skills.
Well, my first musical influence was my dad, and he played a number of things that you could blow. Not professionally, just for fun. But he was a very talented guy who could do all sorts of things. Juggle, play football, cricket, and all that, jump out of airplanes. And I don't know what he was being trained to do as a kid, but my God, he could have been James Bond with all the skills that he possessed. He was amazing, my dad, Peter. And so from the age of 2, I was trying to be just like him and play mouth organ. And they started to buy me harmonicas. So the first time I realised I could play, probably about this big, and I could play. I had a little repertoire of Scotland the Brave, God Save the Queen. There's 2 national anthems there virtually, Banjo on My Knee, Oh Susanna. But suddenly, in one day, I realised I could do all of those. And then years later, having played chromatic harmonica and tried to sound like Tommy Riley doing Dixon of Dock Green and all that, I'm getting really serious with that stuff. I heard blues. First of all, via the Stones, ironically doing Little by Little, Chuck Berry tune, great man who has just passed. And I thought, wow, that's harmonica. What's going on there? And this thing about suddenly bending notes, and I used to practice along with the Stones, the Beatles. I used to practice their mistakes. Never mind getting it right. And then, hugely important for me as a harmonica player was seeing Paul Butterfield, who means very little to people this side of the Atlantic. He's passed on and was recently inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame posthumously, but he was the most fantastic amplified blues harmonica player, very much Little Water style, amplified, amped, and you could be forgiven for thinking you were hearing trumpet or guitar, wailing sort of, almost like a police siren, put to music. And one more little harmonica story, if I'm saying too much, please edit me, was I had a couple of evenings with Larry Adler, who was a childhood hero, who could sit down and play you Rhapsody in Blue. One hand on the harmonica, left hand on the piano. Rhapsody in Blue. I mean, what about that? Yeah, top that. That's and he was telling me how to get octaves, with the tongue and everything. So after all these years of playing harmonica, I was finding out from the horse's mouth, from the master, literally the right way to do that. So every now and again, I play, not that much on every album, but a little bit of harmonica. There's a couple of tracks got harmonica.
Because you did Blues with the Feeling, which is a lot of it. Right?
Oh yeah, I did a whole album that had 50-50, 50% guitar, 50% harmonica, and see, the great problem is, for people that are in the progressive area, the audience doesn't tend to appreciate blues very much. So, although I was asked to join a band that had Jack Bruce, the late great Jack Bruce in it, and Keith Emerson, neither of them, we didn't get to form a band together, but we played together for 3 days, and I think had that all gelled, because we all liked each other, I'm quite sure there would have been an orientation to blues, but I had to wait many years later until Jack passed on that I got asked by his son to take part in a retrospective show, and I said, I'd really like to do Spoonful. I really want to play guitar on Spoonful. So
yeah, we were there. It was great.
Yeah, it was a laugh. I really wanted to do that, and Lulu was there. And, so many people that were obviously fans of the late great Jack Bruce.
So coming to the last track on the album, The Gift, I noticed it's the only song you didn't write.
That's right, I didn't write that, and not only that, it's a song that was written by Les Bennett and her boyfriend Ben Fenner, who's our sound mixer and engineers quite a lot of my stuff. He's produced and all that. But she writes very nice melodies, and I did one before for a Japanese release, a track called Unspoken, which people liked a lot. And then, as I say, people liked it. I didn't write it. All I did was play on it, and I used, again, the late great Gary Moore's guitar on that track, The Gift. So that's me playing his guitar, which I'm...
So is that Fernandez with the sustain?
It's a Fernandez, that's right, yeah. So I'm playing that live. When I record, I use a mixture of Gibson and Fernandez. I'm still very much hooked on that, the Gibson thing. If I haven't said so already, I'm surrounded by, such beauty here. I'm thinking that anyone who owned, one of these Les Pauls and a Marshall stack. When I was a kid, with my face pressed up against shop windows in Shaftesbury Avenue and Denmark Street, Charing Cross Road, I thought anyone who's got that has already made it. You've got that, you have the magic wand, and it's, you've got everything there, really. So I'm sitting in a house of magic.
Oh, that's great, isn't it?
Yeah, isn't it? I mean, for guitarists, I think this is a little bit like heaven. If only I could take them all with me.
We'll have a word. So coming right up to date, I guess you're leaving on tour in a couple of days. Barcelona,
Yes.
First date, a few days' time?
That's right, yeah, we're off Wednesday. Barcelona, first date, and then the second date is San Sebastian in the heart of the Basque country. Of course, I love Spain, another home of the guitar. So sometimes I feel like I'm taking Coles to Newcastle. If I get a nylon guitar out over there, I'm surprised they give me the time of day because they've got such fabulous and always have had the most wonderful guitarists. Flamenco guitarists, of course, are the best rhythm guitarists in the world. It's my humble opinion, and I've tried to learn some of that.
And it's the 40th anniversary of Wind and Wuthering.
Yes.
So I gather there's a special track, or a couple of special tracks you're including in the set list.
Oh yeah, as I say, it's the 40th birthday of Wind and Wuthering, so we do what I think are the best tracks on that. We do 11th Earl of Mar, Blood on the Rooftops, In That Quiet Earth, what's the other one? Afterglow, and we also play Inside and Out, which was intended to be included on that album back in the day, but of course the restrictions of vinyl meant that, to my mind, outstanding track didn't get used, but we do it live and the band do an extraordinary version of that. So yes, a little bit of justice being served, restitution, restoration, all that. Yeah, I love playing that one live, it's a killer track.
And finally, there was the Anderson, Rabin, Wakeman shows. Did you get to see any of those?
Yes, I did. Yeah, 2 days ago we were there, and I got to, because I work with Lee, who's a stunning bass player, and got to talk at length with Trevor Rabin, and it's Lou Molino, the drummer.
That's right, yeah.
Although I know the other two, I didn't get to see them at the gig because they were backstage whilst we were somewhere else, but yeah, I'll pass on congratulations to everyone. I thought they were terrific. Lovely to see them doing that as a team. Yeah, I mean, who wouldn't want to see that? It's I think still everyone was playing to an extraordinary standard, extraordinary playing standard, an extraordinary singing, and yeah, basically wonderful.
So was it a little bittersweet, or even strange, seeing Lee stood where Chris Squire, your friend, would have been?
Ah, well, yes indeed. I'd recorded many times with Chris, who'd actually asked me to join Yes at one point, many years ago, and I said, well, I said, oh, sorry, I'm going to do this other thing. I'm going to do a sort of reinvented Genesis. But obviously I was flattered with that, and of course we all loved Chris, and he was absolutely wonderful, and he is the force that drove Yes. He owned the name, and but what an extraordinary legacy he left behind, and yeah, fabulous to see Lee doing his version of that, and you know, even recording now, as we were due, Roger King and I, Nick Beggars was going to play bass on the Night Siren, and he got sick, and he wasn't able to do several projects at the end of the Stephen Wilson tour. He was seriously ill, and so we said, we're going to have to do this, you know, Roger, you're going to have to be the bass player, and we were thinking, I know I was, you know, we've worked with Chris. We felt we were literally channeling him in terms of what would Chris have liked? What would he have approved? Yes, he would have stuck in an accent there. He would have done a little tricky bar of such and such, you know, the drums would have gone with him. So in a way, I think of Chris as, you know, the bass player of what we now call prog. Not to mention John Wetton, who was a great pal. When talking about the loss of, you know, great people. I remember seeing John playing with King Crimson. And the era was Large Tongues in Aspic, and I thought, well, who is this guy on voice and that sound. And he wasn't making a fuss, he was just doing it in a very workmanlike, natural sort of manner, and I just sort of loved it instantly on stage. And then saw him at Guildford Civic when that was up and running, and then shot off back down to the Speakeasy back in central London that night, and who should walk in but John. And I said, "Oh, I've just seen you on stage." He said, "Well, was it all right?" I said, "Oh my God, it was more than all right. You know, fantastic with the band." We became pals then, and we did a whole bunch of things together. So I'm very lucky that, especially in recent times, I have worked with so many great people. No matter what I've done, there's so many great people.
And could I ask, are there any leftover tracks that you recorded with Chris still to come out?
There might be something. I'll have to look very closely at the, at what's in the. We did do some things, and some of it ended up being used on Japanese bonus tracks, and we even did a bit of blues together. And Chris wasn't averse to that. He wasn't a musical snob in any way. So his history. There's a big wingspan here. He started out as a choir boy, and so he was familiar with Hubert Parry and Jerusalem and I Was Glad and these huge kind of symphonic choral classics, and but at the same time he was familiar with Chuck Berry and the more complicated stuff, but he kind of wrote the book, didn't he? There's certain bands and certain characters that it will be forever Chris, and very proud to have been involved with several projects with him. He was killer, really, quite something, and a great fun to work with. Same with John. When you got to work with these guys, it was always friends first, and music as a natural extension of the laughs that we had together, and that can surmount any difficulty.
Thanks, Steve. That's great insight into an icon.
Oh well, thank you very much, and lovely talking to you.
It's been brilliant. So just to remind everyone. New album comes out on the 24th of March.
It's called The Night Siren.
Night Siren.
Plug.
23rd, tour starts, and I think we land back in the UK in Cardiff on the 28th.
That sounds right.
April, and then culminating when MetalTalk will be there at the Palladium, I believe, on the 19th.
The Palladium,
19th of May.
Looking forward to doing the Palladium. I do believe I think it's sold out, or it's all but sold out, so I'm getting the nod. Looking forward to doing the Palladium. I only ever guested there once on a charity show, so I've not done that with my own band, but that place has got an extraordinary history. I remember seeing Cliff and the Shads there circa 1965 or 66. Who were No Perfect, of course, and then Alex Harvey Band, sensational Alex Harvey Band. And both those gigs were killer for different things. And I also remember seeing Nuriel, the only time they had ballet on Sunday night at the London Palladium, I remember seeing him fly across the stage from one end to the other in one leap. It seemed to go in slow motion. It's a great theatre. It's got a fabulous history. So looking forward to that, and it's my hometown. So, sincerely, folks.
We look forward to seeing you there. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cheers.